My name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Museum Open House. This ongoing series features and highlights many of the outstanding museums and other cultural institutions. The main purpose of most programs is to inform viewers about current and upcoming exhibits, various programs, resources, and other opportunities that are available for the general public. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guest Stephanie Abrams and Mike Thornton, both of whom are associated with the New England Air Museum, which is located adjacent to Bradley International Airport in Windsor Locks, Connecticut. Stephanie serves as the president and CEO, and Mike is the curator and director of interpretation. During the program, we'll be learning all about the history and mission of the museum and how it's grown, developed, and operates today. We'll go on a behind the scenes tour and in the process come to better understand and appreciate how the New England Air Museum brings the science, history, and wonder of aviation to life. Let's start by meeting Stephanie and Mike and then learning all about the New England Air Museum. Welcome. So delighted you're both able to be here.
Oh, we are thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's been
thanks, Jay.
our pleasure. It's been fascinating reading about the museum. Eager to hear more and have you inform viewers. But before we jump right to that, I think it would be of interest if each of you briefly share a little bit more about your backgrounds, perhaps what attracted you to the museum, and what your current positions entail. Stephanie, would you please begin?
Absolutely. I came here through a very odd route, but in other ways, it makes perfect sense. So I worked in television for many, many decades. I started at World News Tonight for ABC News National,
Mhm.
working with the science editor, and then went to 2020 when it was still Barbara Walters and Hugh Downs, and then did documentaries for many decades.
Mhm.
However, my father was in World War II. He loved everything about flight. When his eyesight changed, they sent him to A&P Mechanics School, but he worked on B-29 Super Fortress aircraft,
Wow.
and we have one. And he loved everything about science. On the other hand, my mother was a fine artist, and so I'm very left and right brained. So, but along the way, I think because of his love of aerospace, I wound up doing video for Sikorsky, for Pratt and Whitney, for GE, and I'm talking about for decades. I had a production company with a partner, and we were preferred vendor. So
Mhm.
I had this odd, confluence of gifts of knowing how to bring in an audience. I'm a storyteller, but I have a deep knowledge of aerospace and aviation and a deep passion for it. So one of our board members had called me some time ago. I think it was before COVID, but foot traffic was down, and it was just looking for ideas. Said, "You're creative, come up with ideas," and I did. And then when my predecessor retired, here I am.
That's fabulous. Well, it seems like a perfect match to say the least. How fortunate for the museum and as you as well to be able to continue your passion in several areas through the museum. Um,
Oh,
Mike,
thank you so much.
welcome. Could
Okay.
you share a little bit about yourself,
Yeah.
please?
No, I've never met anyone who's had the same path into becoming a curator, but I hail from New York City, where I worked at the New York City Transit Museum and had done projects with the Met, the New York Public Library, and spent the better part of my career with the New York Historical Society there in Manhattan as their military history and toy curator, done projects with the TWA Hotel, New Jersey Vietnam Veterans Memorial Foundation. But in all my life, even though I was one of those kids who would run around the playground with their arms stretched out making airplane noises, never thought in my career that I would actually get to work with aircraft or the history of aviation. I figured it would be colonial this or Revolutionary War
Hmm.
that, especially in New England. But the job came up, and I was like, maybe. But then I met Stephanie, and the mission here is really what has drawn me, and that the idea that we could take a collection of aircraft and transform it into a public history of the American experience and the international impact of Connecticut's New England's regional role in pacing aviation progress.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. Well, picking up on that, Stephanie, can you continue to share a little bit more about the history and mission of the museum and even how it's evolved under your tenure?
Absolutely. I'll start with the beginning, being a storyteller. So it started when a group of aviation enthusiasts, including Igor Sikorsky Jr., found a barn with an aircraft in it. It was a Bancroft, which is the first aircraft. It's the oldest aircraft made in Connecticut. And so they
Mm.
thought, oh, let's start a museum. And so they started the um, Connecticut Aviation Historical Association. Before they could get it into a museum, the barn burned down. We have just the very small piece of the Bancroft in our civilian hangar. Anyway, so then the museum moved into an interior space on the other side of Bradley International Airport. And then in 1979, a tornado actually came through Connecticut, which
Mm.
was very unusual, flung aircraft like they were toys every place, and it was largely destroyed. And so then we moved into this facility in the 70s, first with just hangar, with one hangar, and now we have three.
Mm.
Um, and since I've been here, I'm a storyteller, and I think my feeling was you really have to love aerospace and aircraft to just enjoy looking at an aircraft. So when I met Mike, and I needed a curator and director of interpretation, it was like I found him. That's it, because he's also a
Oh,
storyteller. Because it's who designed it? What was it for? What did it fly in? And we just did an interview with a television station about our new Pratt and Whitney exhibit. People look at aircraft and they think about the the airframe. They don't think about the power plant that powers them and just the magic of flight and how it's evolved over time and the step changes that it's going through now. So our mission truly is to present the story of aerospace and aviation with an emphasis on New England's role, but also the genius and inspiration that made it possible. But as importantly, is to inspire young people to see all the many careers that they never even dreamed were possible. I mean, kids don't know what they don't know, but they come in here and there are so many opportunities in aerospace that are so exciting. And we have stories of children who have gone through our summer camp who are now, getting their pilot's license. They're in Young
wow.
Eagles and they're moving into these wonderful careers.
Picking up on that, I think another wonderful thing you do is tell the stories of the people behind the aircraft associated with the different innovations over the years. Because as you were saying, to give the machinery even more life. And those stories, which we'll hear a little bit more as we continue our conversation, Stephanie, you gave us a little sense. Could you just, for those not familiar who haven't had the opportunity to visit yet, just give us a little overview of the layout and the museum setup, please?
Absolutely. So we're on the grounds of Bradley International Airport, right near the tower. So we're kind of easy to find. Um, we have three enormous hangars and a lot of exhibits. So I'll walk you through. So you come into the lobby, and we have beautiful conference rooms that a lot of aerospace companies will rent out, but also
Hmm.
use it for it's multi-purpose. We'll have kids in there. We use it for a lot of things. We have a beautiful gift shop with things that you won't find anyplace else. The first hangar is our military hangar, and it has everything from a P-51 um, Thunderbolt, which flew in World War II, and now it has the interpretation of what it was built for, who flew it,
Yeah.
what it accomplished. To the helicopters that flew in Vietnam, to at the end of the hangar, we have an F-15. And, the F-15, again, it's an aircraft that is still in use, but also it has an engine, the the F the 100, the Pratt and Whitney 100 engine, which enables the F-15 to literally take off on its tail. I mean,
Wow.
it enables an
Hmm.
aircraft to take off on its tail. So we have incredible aircraft in there, and we allow people to get into many of the aircraft. So at the P-47 Thunderbolt, you're sitting in an aircraft that actually flew in World War II. I mean, your hands
Yeah.
are touching the controls, that are kind of smoothed by all of the hands that came before it, and also into some of the, original jets. So that's incredible. Then you take a left and you go through what used to be just a plain quarter, when I got here, which is New England Women in Aviation. And it
Mm.
starts with the very earliest women, female aviators who you look at the contraptions that they flew and the courage that they had. And there's one woman, Ruth Law, who in this contraption flew out of Chicago in the dead of winter, even though she was from Connecticut, and she broke distance records for all pilots,
Wow.
up through the Amelia Earharts and to women becoming um, senior, well, also the WASPs, who were incredible, who were incredibly necessary in World War II and don't get enough credit, to the women who became pilots for commercial aircraft and also officers in the military, up through the women who are creating the future of aerospace, including Dr. David Newman from MIT and a lot of women who have been in space. Then to the right, there is an exhibit on the Kosciuszko Squadron 303. They were a Polish squadron. They fought in the Battle of Britain. We love unsung heroes. Many historians feel that the Battle of Britain would have gone the other way had they not flown. And there's a lot of digital throughout the exhibits now. So there are mini documentaries and there are digital kiosks so you can get more information. Then you come into our civilian hangar, which is one of my favorites. It's painted black, it has theatrical lighting, and we have incredible aircraft in there. We have a VS-44, it's Sikorsky's flying boat. I mean,
Mm.
back then there weren't really runways.
Mm.
So this takes off and lands in water, and it was the first transcontinental aircraft. It's
Wow.
enormous, and it is Sikorsky's genius. We have an aircraft that is two tail numbers off of Amelia Earhart's Electra. We have, and
Ah.
I love to make people guess what they're looking at. It's the control car, the base of a blimp that was used in World War II for surveillance. We even have a flying machine that was made by an 18-year-old who lived in Berlin, Connecticut, and it flew. And one amazing
Wow.
thing that washes over me every time is you look at that and you see what that looked like. You turn around and you look at the flying boat, and it was perhaps only 30 years. Aviation just happened just in the blink of an eye.
Mm.
Um, and then our Sikorsky exhibit, which Mike did an incredible job on. There's a theater, we've won Webby and Telly Awards. Again, the television background comes in handy. I still work with my former production partner. Um, but it hits the point that you were making, Jay, about the people behind the aircraft. So this recreates, it's called Through the Eyes of Igor Sikorsky. And he is someone who he had visions that he believed were divine. In interviewing his son Sergei, who worked with his father, he said, "Well, yes, sometimes father believed he went on time travel." But
Mm.
anyway, so you go through that exhibit. Then you go through a Kidsport, which is a place, for children. We have flight simulators that are appropriate for children, and I left out the flight simulators we have for adults, but I'll get back to that because I'm taking over here. But anyway, you go through Kidsport, and there's also Legos, and sometimes I go through and they're just all over the place, and sometimes there's an entire airport that has been built with Legos. And
Wow.
then the last hangar is the B-29 hangar, which of course is special to me. It's a B-29 Super Fortress, and it's the most restored on the planet. So being able to get into it, I could feel the presence of my father. It was very special for me, and a lot of other aircraft from that theater. But to me, one of the shining moments in the museum is that that hangar also has an exhibit on the Tuskegee Airmen, and it's called the Tuskegee Airmen, Their Untold Stories. Also has a theater, and the film in there has also won Webby and Telly Awards. And there are many, many documentaries as you go through. And that exhibit we were so lucky. We told the story. I've always approached stories as walk in these shoes. We told it through the actual airmen. Two
Mm.
of them have passed away since we did the video, and their families and their friends of what it was like to be Black in America before World War II, how they had to fight to get in, and how they managed to perform with such excellence, regardless of the two wars that they faced, one against our enemies and the other against the abject racism that they were facing.
Most definitely.
So that's
Well,
our museum.
thank you. Fabulous overview. Mike, picking up on that, how do you, as Curator Director of Interpretation, decide on what to focus on, and then create these incredible exhibits and experiences for
Yeah.
visitors?
Yeah, well, we always look for heart. I would always rather be the anecdote someone tells at the bar that night than the history they repeat back to their teacher that they learned about. And we're always looking for that kind of human spark as the inroad into our stories. And Stephanie was saying about Igor Sikorsky believing he time traveled. And we opened when we read this anecdote that as a young 11-year-old boy, this is 3 years before the Wright brothers have flown, he had this vision where he woke up in a tube and there was light streaming in through the windows, but there was brass and mahogany furniture. He's like, where am I? Am I on a ship? And he looks out the porthole and sees clouds going by. And he was like, I'm flying. I'm on a flying ship. And of course, he was read Jules Verne by his parents and loved Da Vinci. And we were like, how many kids can relate to visualizing the future? And here was this man who had had an experience of that, later believed, not only did he believe he time traveled, but he believed that he could apprehend, in his words, the needs of the technical future. And if we looked to technology to serve humanity, it would tell us where humanity needed to go. And of course, he invents the helicopter, the quintessential life-saving aircraft. And we're like, that's our arc. So we start with a young boy who's a dreamer and having these visions to Elder Sikorsky and his company that continues to innovate life-saving solutions. And so we're always looking for that magical moment that kind of speaks to the people. And of course, that's what's so great about aviation is that people, that's what it's all about. And you feel that here walking through our halls, whether it's the military gallery or the civil gallery, you feel the risk. You feel the danger of being 22, 23 in charge of something like the B-29, trying to get your crew home, to be a Tuskegee airman, flying your first day, your flight test. Are you going to be failed just because of the color of your skin after working so hard to finally get that chance to solo? To the incredible women like Amelia Earhart in the 99s, and then on up through a contemporary where we look at the industry. And of course, like recently, the men and women of Pratt and Whitney who have consistently now over a century had to foresee what is the next step
Yeah.
change for aviation progress and to predict that and innovate that from scratch. Often, it's just such a compelling story. I mean, we our cup overflows with interpretive possibility.
How do you balance telling the stories, creating the exhibits so it's engaging for a range of visitors from
Oh,
young
yes.
to old?
Yes. Yeah, and I think that is part of my principal attraction to being here is that it's Stephanie in terms of her leadership and direction. We could just be an airplane zoo. We could just cater completely to buffs, people who know the top speed and the max altitude of every aircraft that's ever been. But I would rather make a convert into the cult of aviation than preach to the choir. And so we do try and bring that human element forward wherever possible. One of the creative challenges, of course, and harking back to my experience working in smaller and larger historical societies, it's pretty easy to move a historical chair this way or that way. These airplanes call the shots. They are big. And so our displays and interpretive panels and our theaters all have to kind of carefully work in this waltz with these things that are not easily moved, that drip oil, that are rare. um, so we find creative ways to let the aircraft speak and have a presence, but also to bring in the people who aren't necessarily there anymore through media and film and oral histories and artifacts that sort of speak to the human experience behind flight.
And also, I'd like to add that Mike has found a way, and I guess we do it in
Oh,
partnership with video, that I've seen children in the Tuskegee exhibit come out teary because they didn't
Yeah.
know the story.
Mhm.
So yes, there's the technical of what happened and where they flew and that they were the escorts for the bombers and what that means, but there's the human story. So there's something. I mean, we have every demographic. We have aerospace engineers, but we have children. We have children and grandparents. We have children and their parents. And so we really find something that will speak to each of those demographics and all of the exhibits and the mini documentaries and the films. And also, Mike does these brilliant digital. What would you call them, Mike? That also tells the story, and they're
We have our
really
panels. Yeah.
designed for a lay person, but also something that an engineer will think, "Yep, that's right."
Yeah. Yeah, that is the greatest challenge in that of all the places I've ever worked, I've never, principally a lot of our buffs are engineers who made the planes. And so they know the math behind it. And so we have to be very careful in fact checking. But at the end of the day, it's about accessibility and taking these complex technical histories and boiling it down into a haiku that can be that children can read it and understand, that the mom from the town next over, and then the buff who built the plane or flew in it will say, "Yep, they got it right." And so it's quite a challenge.
Well, speaking to those buffs, I know you also do a lot of work with restoration.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
just a
Our
few words on that, please.
Oh, our restoration team, and then I'll let Mike jump in, but our restoration
Yeah.
team, they take aircraft that come here that look like they came from the boneyard. And for your viewers who don't know what that is, that's kind of where they go to die. They take aircraft that look like that, and by the time they're done, it looks like it rolled off of a manufacturing plant.
Mm,
I mean, and they are wonderfully obsessed because there's every single detail. Mike, you can talk about even the coffee pot in the control
I
card.
mean, the two classic examples that come to mind is this blimp car, which is one of our crown jewels. It's the only one restored to survive anywhere, and the only one restored to complete down to the deck of cards, World War II configuration. The arithmetic that's needed to get this thing in the air was so concise that the Navy actually did math about the coffee pot that would be in the blimp car.
wow.
And they
Oh,
were like, we
wow.
need one that can hold this amount of liquid and it's got to weigh this. And they found these records in the National Archives. And they were like, well, my God, if we're going to be accurate, we've got to find this circa 1941 Montgomery Ward coffee pot. And it was one of the most challenging things to find, but nonetheless, that's the
They did.
dedication of this team here is they tracked one down and and there it is. I mean, our B-29 has a Dixie cup dispenser, which is, no
Wow.
detail is left is left underexplored, and that's such a privilege as a curator to have that dedication, not only professionally, Stephanie's leadership at the top, but these volunteers who just give of their time to will
Mm,
these things back from the twilight zone of history into fresh off the floor condition. Um, it's spooky and it's so magical, and they smell like an old train set and they drip oil, and if we could fly them we would, but they're too precious, but it's that good, and it
that
always takes my breath away every day to walk into the
Oh, that's
hangars.
fabulous. I love that phrase, the twilight zone of
I did too.
history. That is fabulous. Stephanie, what do you hope visitors feel when they leave the New England Air Museum?
That they've time traveled, not in the same way that Igor Sikorsky has, but that they feel the presence of those who created aerospace. Aerospace changed the way we live and will continue to do so. So I want them to feel curiosity. I want them to be inspired. I want them to be inspired by the people, the human genius, and the um, the fortitude that it took to, well,
Hmm.
again, going back to Igor, who has an incredible story, it was fly, fail, fly, fail, fly, fail, but stuck to it
Yeah.
until he succeeded. Um, and to understand how aviation changed the way we live, how it will continue to do so. And also, I think I want them to feel inspired that anything is possible. And for young
One-
people, I want them to see that there are careers they never dreamed of. I want parents to see that there are careers they never thought of for their children, but I want them to walk in here and be transported, depending on which exhibit they're in, into the mind of the people who created whatever that exhibit is about, and to walk away with a deeper understanding of that anything's possible.
Wonderful, wonderful message for sure. Mike, in closing, are there upcoming exhibits and projects you're particularly excited about?
Oh, yeah, always. I mean, again, we could uh, give Stephanie and I a few more years, but on our minds right now are two projects which are near and dear, and just kind of give you a little elevator pitch teaser. Is that one? We're thinking a lot about since it's the 250th anniversary of the nation. It wasn't just a revolution of arms, it was a revolution of science, of the Enlightenment. And one
Mhm.
of the things that comes to the United States at that moment in time is uh, balloon flight. And so we want to look at really 250 years of exploring what is the air. And ballooning was really the first step into aerospace as we understand it today. And so we will look broadly at the lighter than air story through incredible personalities. Through we have the Silas Brooks basket, which is the oldest balloon basket to survive
Wow.
in the United States, on up through that glorious kind of bicentennial glory of, you think, Sesame Street and the colorful balloons. There was a positivist message about balloons and hot air and the incredible innovation to make that accessible to people and the pioneering behind it. We're also, as much as Connecticut has an incredible story about aeronautical propellers and jets, aircraft flight, integral to space flight. And we want to really explore the story of the Apollo era at large, but
Mm.
how Connecticut continues to get us not only into space but onto Mars and beyond. And so looking at that really through the lens initially of Hamilton Standard, which became United Technologies, we are fortunate. Many of our volunteers here, of course, are former aerospace engineers or pilots, and one of our just amazing volunteers who's given so much of his time is Don Rethke of Hamilton Standard. This is Dr. Flush. This is the man who invents the zero gravity space toilet that astronauts know and
Wow.
love. But he was the last Hamilton Standard employee in the Eagle before it took Armstrong and Aldrin to the moon. And so we would tell the story of how that one company has ushered this incredible legacy into being and beyond.
Terrific, terrific. And finally, in closing, Stephanie, how can viewers and others keep up on developments and perhaps get in touch?
So first, our website is www .neam, like New England Air Museum.org. And our website, has a calendar and we'll tell you what's going on. But also become a member. And if you become a member of the museum, you get emails quarterly, sometimes more frequently, because we have so much going on all the time. And there are many levels of membership, which you can see on the website. But that way you really stay informed and always know what's happening.
Terrific, terrific. Well, we'll be sure to have that information in the closing credits. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of the program. I want to thank both of you again so much
Thank
for
you, Joy.
taking the time to be here. Just fabulous overview and then taking us in and around the museum. Can see why it's in such good hands and why it's such an engaging place to be. Continued success with future endeavors.
Thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
very passionate
Thanks.
about this place. Come see us.
Most
Absolutely.
definitely, most definitely. Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.